They came through the wire nearly naked. Approximately 50 men from the 409th Sapper Battalion entered Firebase Mary Ann at 2:40 in the morning of March 28, 1971, wearing nothing but shorts. Their bodies were coated in charcoal and grease, so no searchlight could catch the curve of a shoulder or the pale of a wrist. They had spent hours in the crawl approach. They had cut 4 lanes through the razor wire using satchel charges, one controlled detonation at a time, each one timed to be absorbed by ambient noise. They moved inside the perimeter without a single alarm being raised. 33 Americans never got out of their sleeping bags. It was the highest casualty firebase attack of the entire Vietnam War. Not because the 409th Sapper Battalion was extraordinary, though they were, because the men they killed were living inside a base that its own army had already decided to abandon. And nobody told them. Firebase Mary Ann was 3 days from being handed over to South Vietnamese forces. The men on the hill had their bags half-packed. They were counting days to Chu Lai, then to the Da Nang, then to the world. The withdrawal had started. The things that keep men alive on a firebase, the watch rotations, the replaced flares, the working scopes, the scouts who were believed, had started leaving with it. This is not the story of a military defeat. It is the story of what happens when an institution decides a piece of ground no longer matters and forgets to tell the men who are still standing on it. 4 days before the attack, a Kit Carson scout attached to the unit brought a warning. He had heard from local sources that a Sapper unit was planning an assault on Mary Ann within the week. The warning was passed up the chain. It was assessed as inconclusive. Nothing changed. The men on the hill did not know about the warning. What they knew was that the base was being handed over to South Vietnamese forces within the week. They were already thinking past it. The bags were coming down from the rafters of the bunkers. Letters were going out. The men counting days to Chu Lai and then Da Nang. And then the world had been in this position long enough to know that the final week of a combat posting feels like almost safe. Almost as a specific kind of danger nobody writes about in training manuals. 3 days before the attack, a dog at one of the outer listening posts began growling toward the tree line. The handler reported it. The report was received. The dog knew. Nobody listened. 2 days before the attack, soldiers clearing trash from the wire set off several trip flares during cleanup. Standing procedure was clear. Any trip flare triggered for any reason gets replaced before dark. The flares were not replaced. They sat empty in the dirt. Gone. 1 day before the attack, the base's starlight scopes were crated and shipped to the rear. Starlight scopes let the men on guard see in the dark. They went out as drawdown equipment. The handover was coming, and equipment was being redistributed ahead of it. The men going to their guard posts that night were not told. They had no way to see what was moving toward them in the grass. The night of the attack, the South Vietnamese soldiers assigned to the outer perimeter positions had gone fishing. The 409th had prepared for 6 weeks. They had a map of the firebase. They had a schedule built around the base's guard rotation, which had become predictable enough to time their approach around. They had rehearsed on a mock-up. What they had not needed to plan around was alertness, because the base's alertness had already been removed, one item at a time, by the institution that was leaving. No sentry saw them arrive. No flare lit. No scope caught the charcoal shapes moving on their bellies through the grass. The warning sat unread. The dog had been right. 50 men wearing nothing but shorts stood up inside Firebase Mary Ann at 2:40 in the morning, knowing exactly where to go. You are in your sleeping bag when the first mortar rounds hit the perimeter. Your first thought is mortars. Everyone's first thought is mortars. When the Brigade Tactical Operations Center receives the initial contact report at 2:45, they assess incoming fire and wait for the all clear. They do not scramble medevac. They do not commit gunships. Mortars happen on fire bases. You ride them out, check your casualties at first light. File the report. Inside the wire, what is happening is not mortars. The base is overrun. The 409th have moved to the command post, the commo bunker, and the inner defensive positions. They know where each one is because they were given a map. The assault had been rehearsed for weeks. Every position on Mary Ann had been identified through reconnaissance and informant reporting. They roam through the burning base with a methodical calm that has nothing accidental in it. They know what they came for and they are getting it. CS gas pours from grenades thrown into bunker entrances. You cannot breathe. Some men stumble into the open and are cut down before they understand what they have stumbled into. Some stay inside the gas because outside is worse. The Coke can grenades, tin cans packed with explosive and nails, manufactured in the jungle and harder to hear coming than a standard grenade, land in doorways and go off in the spaces where men are sleeping. You decide your best chance is to lie still. Face down in the dirt, not moving, you listen to the base burn around you. Someone crouches next to you. You can feel hands going through your pockets. You feel fingers close around your wristwatch and slide it off your wrist. You do not move. The sapper stands and walks away. You are alive. McGee, a West Point lieutenant, does not lie still. He has no rifle, or he cannot reach it, or he has reached it and it is not enough. In the darkness, with the base burning and the radio gone and no orders coming from anyone because there is no command structure left to issue them, he makes a decision that no training document describes and no tactical manual recommends. He goes toward the sound of a sapper in the dark. He kills that man with his bare hands. Then he is shot. He keeps fighting. He is 23 years old and he is on a base that was 3 days from handing him a plane ticket home. And he fights until there is nothing left to fight with. He is the only man on Firebase Mary Ann that night who closes the distance and wins it. He dies doing it. The Army records him. His name is written down. Spielberg, the company commander, runs down the hallway of the Tactical Operations Center and hits a wall of CS gas before he reaches the commander's quarters. He reverses, finds the north exit, gets outside. The base is burning. Sappers are moving between structures with the calm of men who know they have adequate time. Spielberg understands what the brigade's radio traffic is not yet conveyed. This is not mortars. The base has been entered. He finds a working radio and calls artillery down on his own perimeter, on Mary Ann itself, on the positions where his own men might still be fighting. It is the correct tactical decision. Enemy soldiers are inside the wire and the only available answer is fire. He makes the call. He is later awarded the Silver Star. He carries the memory of the dog that growled at the tree line for the rest of his life. The first gunship arrives overhead at 3:20 a.m., 40 minutes after the attack began. By then, the calculus has already been settled. The base burns. The structures that held the radio equipment are already collapsed. You do not know for certain whether the men fighting around you are yours or theirs, in the darkness. Because in this darkness you cannot see faces, only silhouettes. And the silhouettes are moving through a fire base that is on fire in every direction. The 409th know where they are going. The men defending Mary Ann have not been told who is inside their wire. Some die in their sleeping bags without ever knowing the attack has begun. Some make it outside and die there. The ones who find weapons and fight back are doing so individually, without coordination, because no coordinated plan for this had ever been made. It had not been made because the men running this base had decided, somewhere in the administrative logic of drawdown and handover, that the specific kind of threat that arrived at 2:40 on the morning of March 28th was not worth planning for. The base was 3 days from being someone else's problem. It became their problem anyway. Dawn came. It showed what the darkness had hidden. The command post was rubble. The commo bunker had burned through the night and was still smoking. By first light, the medics and the men who came on the relief helicopters found what the darkness had kept from them. Rows of bodies, burned to charcoal in the positions where they had been sleeping. Some had not moved. The fire had reached them before they did. The smoke that hung over the hill in the morning was partly the command post and partly the men who had been inside it. 33 Americans were recovered from Firebase Mary Ann. 83 were wounded. 33 killed. 83 wounded, 33 KIA, 83 WIA, the highest casualty count from any single firebase attack in the entire Vietnam War. The 409th left 15 confirmed dead on the grounds. Blood trails into the surrounding jungle suggested their actual losses were considerably higher. The 409th Sapper Battalion did not overrun Firebase Mary Ann. The withdrawal did. The Army's investigation into Firebase Mary Ann lasted months and produced a formal document of institutional indictment that named failures at multiple levels of command. The trip flares had not been replaced. The starlight scopes had been removed without briefing the men who depended on them. The Kit Carson warning had been dismissed without investigation. The listening posts had been inadequate. Patrol rotation had not been enforced. The perimeter had been treated as a garrison perimeter rather than a combat perimeter, which is a distinction that costs nothing to maintain and costs everything when it slips. The investigation found something that did not appear in headlines but is more damning than anything that did. The base's defensive posture had been allowed to erode specifically because command had concluded that the handover was imminent. The logic was that if South Vietnamese forces were taking over the base in days, maintaining full combat readiness in the interim was an unnecessary strain on men who were preparing to leave. The logic was wrong. 33 men died from it. The battalion commander, Doyle, was relieved of command. Officers at multiple levels received administrative letters of reprimand. There were no courts-martial, no criminal charges. Administrative letters, the Army's mechanism for marking a record without ending a career, and the Army's way of drawing a line under what had happened at Firebase Mary Ann. The base was handed over to South Vietnamese forces within days of the attack. The transfer proceeded as scheduled. The war's drawdown continued. The 33 men killed on the hill were buried across the United States in the weeks after, in places that were already holding other funerals. Their families had been expecting them home. They had been days from it. William Doyle came home. The men of the 1st Battalion, 46th Infantry, came home too. and most of them built something from what they brought back. Doyle did not. The record followed him. The relief followed him. What a man carries from a night like March 28, 1971. The 33 dead. The investigation report. The letter of reprimand. The specific knowledge of what had been allowed to erode under his command does not pack down small. He carried it for 29 years. He died in 2000. The official cause was the accumulated consequence of years of alcohol. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. He was the last casualty of Firebase Mary Ann. The men who died that morning were killed by a base their own army had already written off. The sappers who killed them were professionals who crawled for hours through a perimeter that had been stripped of everything that should have seen them coming. The negligence was not an accident. It was a policy. The policy of withdrawal applied to a firebase 3 days from handover, and 33 men who did not know they were no longer being defended. The investigation said the base had been allowed to erode. That is the bureaucratic language for what happened. The human language is that 33 men died in their sleeping bags, because the institution responsible for keeping them alive had decided it was almost time to leave, and it started acting accordingly before it actually did. The almost killed them. The almost is what is buried at Arlington alongside Doyle's record. If your father served at Firebase Mary Ann, or if you knew one of the 33, leave his name and his unit in the comments. He deserved to know what hill he was on and who was watching the wire. The least we can do is say his name now.